on your intuition to rank which ones you think are the most important ones.
What do you mean by power dynamics? There can be positive power dynamics or negative power dynamics.
But I should guess that someone who responds that should answer. No?
Yeah.
Who
Okay.
answer power dynamic? Raise your hand. Bro, that. They have many votes. Not that much, but they have many votes for power dynamics. 2 votes for power dynamics. No. Right. I don't know. Are you getting me? I don't know. My English is so bad. You're not getting them.
Stand up.
Yeah. So I'm asking if any person voted for power dynamic here.
We're just trying to understand, what do you think?
Power dynamic. Who votes for that? Sorry?
It's not like votes, it's like you're ranking them.
Okay, yeah, but who ranked who? Oh, so you're going to say that it's the lowest? Yeah. No, nobody. Okay. Who ranked that higher than 5? Thank you for that, Maritan. Everybody say, okay. Can you explain what is power dynamic process?
Well, we've been talking about like how the government interacts with citizens and how citizen like communication and needs sometimes like what's pre-existing in the infrastructure. So I guess in that sense, like the power dynamic between all of the like players of the industry, how that affects like a successful city.
Thank you.
So it could be a positive effect or a negative effect, but it's a crucial effect. Okay, that helps. Ignacio, do you want ecosystemic or machines?
I think it's both. No, systemic, because like the systemic democracy.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the one. But I have to wrap up the democracy from last week.
Okay.
So
Okay, 3 more votes coming in. Okay, why don't you carry on? What?
So I don't know what's here. Why is it official with the higher education? I know that was the one I picked as well. Campus, a lot of times the infrastructure creates the city. There's it's a city within the of the infrastructure as well as all the other.
Did anyone choose agriculture and commercial services? Geographical conditions? Why did you choose?
Because I think if we're talking about creating a city, creating a successful city, a lot of times, like just the land that it's on, like the natural benefits of where people's land is settled is what leads the a city up. I think they're just unchangeable things about the way the earth is formed. But I think some places are very nice.
Yeah, that's true. And that was, yeah, go ahead.
And who chose agriculture, commercial services?
No one? Creative people?
I put creative people as my second, because I feel like people looking three after, and the infrastructure can all be inspired by those people and transformed by those people.
I agree. That's it.
That's it?
And, but we do have a few questions that we would like to answer.
Please.
Yeah.
I need this program.
One question is how agriculture and commercial services actually shape cities, because a lot of folks actually speak about it being a driving force, but it doesn't really like give much detail on how what the process is like.
Yeah. Other questions?
One that I have is if the contemporary cities all have their own operating systems, which parts of those systems are the most critical in creating successful or resilient cities?
So there's two parts there.
Hmm.
Do each city have its own operating system?
I think each reading kind of talked about them having different things that drive them.
Let's break it into two questions. Does every city have its own operating system? And the second question is,
What are the most, which parts are the most important in those systems?
which parts of the system, which features of the system, which rules, which forms, which spaces of the system work towards sustainability?
Mhm.
Is that okay?
Yes,
You accept the wording?
I accept.
Okay. Other questions?
So can somebody ask? Like they ask any questions that they want. For them to answer, like any question that all has, they might want to like.
Yeah, what are the burning questions? And let's keep in mind that this is about now, this is about the year 2050. When we look back at Chicago, when we look back at Rome, when we look at creative cities in the 90s, we're only looking back so much as it helps us solve real burning questions and problems in the year 2050. Aiden, you had something? No.
I have something.
Okay.
So his question always comes to my mind when I'm reading Ronald. Is he explained one nature, the first nature, and the second one. So the first, and this is the second one is the 20th century nature, where human dominates in some ways nature to create the city. The question that I have is if we can find a third one. So what is the third nature? What is next? The first nature is the original one, the second is the one that we build with our man-made system. What is the third nature?
I love that question. This is a question that propels us into the rest of the semester. Because so much of what urban designers and architects have been working on is, well, that didn't work in the 20th century. Are there indigenous understandings of natural and human systems? Are there indigenous sciences that offer a framework, an operating system for more successful outcomes in third nature? I love that question. Any other questions?
Any other burning questions you guys might have?
Because if I were you, I would be demanding answers, right? Who's pissed? Look at the world out there if you're not pissed yet. Who's pissed off? A little bit pissed off. Okay? So what do you need? What do you need? Harness that energy. This energy is your superpower. I'm pissed off about the way the world is. How could you do this to us? Right? That's taken for granted. Now, what? What are we supposed to do? Right? What are we supposed to do about fill in the blank? What do we got? What do you got? What are we supposed to do about what can we do about
Housing crisis.
the housing crisis? What can we do about climate change? Okay. This is the spirit of this, and it's very productive for you to harness this energy, direct your questions to us, challenge us to make good on Wentworth's promise. Hey, Wentworth, you're supposed to be so great. Hey, Wentworth, how much money did my family turn over to you? Hey, Wentworth, where's my return on investment, Wentworth? You feel that energy? Harness that energy. What do you need to justify the student loans that you will be paying back for the next 3 decades, that will be threatening your ability to buy a house, that will be harming your romantic relationships, convincing you that you shouldn't have children yet, right? You feel that energy? What do you need to justify all this sacrifice? What do you need from us? And affordable housing, climate change. Aaron's got 3 or 4 more if you guys.
I just,
Go ahead.
I was just saying the road safety thing, that's not really us.
Yeah, it is us.
So transportation safety.
Street safety. My kids, I'm gonna have kids when I grow up, and I want them to be safe. Where's that? Right? What else?
Creating third spaces.
Third spaces. What's a third space, Aaron?
Somewhere that we don't work or then nowhere else to go.
That is no recreation or not. Is that recreation or
Like,
more than
it
that?
could be considered recreation, but like a bar could also be, it's not a bar isn't recreation, I mean.
I like that it's more than recreation.
Yeah, it's a good category. I don't feel, I feel a little threatened at work that it's not a safe space for me. Home is so small because I can't afford the rent in Fort Point Channel area. It's a micro unit. I wish there was a place where I could hang out and feel comfortable and feel like I belong without having to buy a $17 cocktail, right? Third spaces. We love third spaces. Other questions before we move on?
The disconnect between like dense, like then like semi-dense suburbs and like less dense like rural areas.
So, what was the verb? Disconnection. What to do about, well, there's also not a lot of the second category, the less dense,
Like suburbs.
like the missing middle,
Um,
right? There's the missing middle. Are you asking about the missing middle?
I feel like there's places that are like designated as that, but they're not like satisfactory.
Okay. The design quality of less dense settings.
Yeah.
And I think this is related to the missing middle. Like we have luxury towers in Boston more and more. We have single family houses out the yin yang surrounding all of our cities in the United States. But where's the affordable middle ground where it's not a single family house, but it's not a high rise luxury condo, it's not public housing, it's actually a reasonably high quality, medium density walkable to transit and the grocery store. Where is that fabric that you crave so much? How come the market cannot supply that for us? Why is the market not satisfying our needs for that middle housing? That's worth getting worked up about. Yeah. Okay. So we're okay?
Yep.
All right. Thank you. So as we move to the last 3 weeks of the semester, it's actually more and more challenging to make these topics directly relevant and pertinent to the challenges that you will be facing between now and the year 2050, which is the model, that is the challenge of the course, is how do we prepare you for those moment of truth, those moments of truth that you encounter during your careers, where every head in the room turns to look at you and they're looking for an answer. It's going to happen to you just as it's happened to us. And we wish someone had supported us better to make us more prepared, right, Ignacio? We wish someone had prepared us better for those moments of truth. Typically in our careers, we get put on the spot. We fail miserably. And we think about that for weeks and months and years. Say, oh, I should have said this. How come I didn't have the answer? Why didn't my education prepare me for that moment of truth? Right? That's the energy. So our job, we're painfully aware of how inadequate education in the past has been to preparing design professionals for the key moments of truth that we face in our careers. And that's what we're focusing on. Oh, we have a beautiful problem here today. Here's the scene. Look at it. We're bursting at the seams. Look at this. It's a full house.
Almost.
Almost. So the topic today is the city as a machine. My part of the topic is city as a machine. It's part of a series of 3 lectures: city as a machine, cities as an organism, and cities as a cosmos. These 3 models come directly out of the origin story of this course. This course is taught all over the world, the history and theory of cities. It's a variation on a course that was taught at MIT in the 60s. People who took that course carry on in the spirit of that course. It's taught by Kevin Lynch in the 60s and Julian Beinart starting in the 80s and up till 2022. And then it stopped. He killed the course, but it lives on in the teaching of their students. So versions of this course are taught all over the world, and they generally follow the model of Kevin Lynch's theory of good city form, the book. And there's in that book, he says there's multiple paradigms that inform the design of cities and how cities do what they do. And 3 of them are city as cosmos. The earliest cities are cities as cosmos. Then the cities as an organism, more recently. And then in the modern age, the cities as a machine. So in the spirit of this version of the course, where we focus on your moment of crisis in the year 2050, where you need to be prepared, you need to have an answer, you need to be able to take a leadership position and bring people forward with you to come up with real solutions that a large group of people can support and implement, and see if we can expedite the solution to some of these crises that we're facing. And so we go backwards in history, in the way we teach this course, always looking for clues as to how to answer the questions that we're facing in the year 2050. So there's, but first, let's deepen our.
It probably is turned off. In the side.
It's always my weakness is I have to turn it on. There are a few more questions. Susanna, it's really Susanna's engagement with AI prompted AI to come up with, well, the Roman operating system, it had basilica, thermal baths, it had these architectural elements that were part of the Roman operating system that are no longer part of our operating system, but it is useful to conceive of our world as the product, the implementation of a new operating system that has airports and wholesale food markets where trucks, every morning trucks come in before dawn and they back up to bays here in Boston. It's is it in Everett? It's just north of there are these food markets where trucks come in and then things get moved off of trucks. A truck full of tomatoes pulls up next to a truck full of cucumbers, and then that stuff gets taken off those trucks, and then some tomatoes, cucumbers, lettuce, and carrots, and all the stuff gets put in a new truck, and it comes to Beatty Hall. You call it Beatty, and they offload it and they cook it. What is it?
It's actually pronounced Beatty.
It's actually pronounced Beatty?
Yeah.
You looked it up? So what are the key elements of the operating systems that define our cities? Any city that's going to operate and function successfully is going to have certain elements to it, including these food markets. And without even thinking about it too carefully, I think we just answered that first question, right? How do agriculture and commercial services shape cities? Every city has one of these wholesale food markets where things come in on trucks and get shuffled, and then they go out on trucks and are delivered locally. And the distance between farms and those wholesale markets matter. They matter a lot. When gas prices goes up, it matters even more. Does that make sense? Because the cost of transporting lettuce from the Central Valley of California is much higher now than it was a year ago. So some people have predicted that the era of the 3,000-mile salad is over. That energy used to be so cheap that it wasn't a real factor in the operating systems. Transportation was not a real significant factor keeping things close together. So we could get our water from the island of Fiji. I don't believe it actually comes from there. It's a marketing thing. But salads from California that we eat in Beatty, I don't know. As soon as fossil fuels are no longer so cheap that it doesn't matter, it becomes more of an issue, and you might have to reorganize. Or, as we found out with computer chips, when you lose access to the source of computer chips, your automobile, your car rental during COVID, these industries had a partial collapse because we could not get our hands on computer chips. So all of these are part of this agricultural and commercial services question. There's a logistics function to the form of cities that is important to keep in mind, and it is a factor in how we design physical, formal spatial part of the operating systems, which is what we do. We provide the services. We design the formal spatial components of the larger operating system. And sometimes we have the opportunity to identify new features of an alternative system that can change the rules and can make a difference. So I think this was a really good question to bring to this topic. Also, Isaac's discussion addresses this first question that came up from the What's the Point group. Does every city have its own operating system? What do you guys think? Let's do thumbs. Let's say, yes, every city has its own operating system. No, it doesn't, or kinda. Let's do it. Does every city have its own operating system?
When you say its own, it's unique. I am trying to understand your question.
Like, are there differences?
Oh, okay, got it.
Are there differences? Are there significant differences? Or let's say the differences between Boston's operating system and Miami, Florida's operating system is different enough to make a difference, right? Okay, let's try again. Does every city have its own operating system? Let's see everyone's thumb. There's no abstaining here. Okay. So a lot of sideways stuff. Varden, what do you think? You still working it out? What do you think? Help them out. Okay. So, but Isaac's question is, what's up with this? You say it, Isaac.
Yeah, so like from personal experience, I've been to like less dense parts of LA and like all these single family homes are small. It's like a wide street, and then I go to Phoenix, and it's the same sort of idea, same sort of construction. And it kind of just feels the same, even though they're totally different classes.
So is that evidence to you that it's the same operating system if it's the same formal spatial arrangement?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Isaac is posing this question based on the fact that it's the same forms, the same spatial, so formal, spatial, and the same institutional arrangements. These single family houses on cul-de-sacs, 20, 25 minutes from a commercial center or an office park, distributed on freeways and arterials and cul-de-sacs, right? It's the same outcome, same operating system, right?
Yes.
So there's evidence of identical operating systems operating across the United States. And if you think back to week 10 or 9, the American Dream Overseas, increasingly, the formal spatial institutional arrangements of the US operating system are being replicated in many other places with some variation, some shifting, but it's the same single family houses on the same cul-de-sacs, in the same road network, in the same economic situation. And we used to say, but it's different. In the US, people live in these houses. In China and Indonesia and India and Pakistan, nobody lives in these houses. They're just investment properties. There's just a few servants there keeping it, protecting the investment value. They don't even rent them out, right? So it's a different operating system because here they're occupied and there they're empty. Just wait 10 years. 10 years later, now we have to recognize that a lot of these single family houses are empty in the United States. So it's the same operating system. It's an investment property. And you had a statistic, Ignacio, of homelessness. It's how many
Can we
empty.
say that? I need to remember. We say that in the class ago.
Yeah. What was it?
So if I remember well, it was something like we have 40-something empty units per homeland in the America. It's in the, if you don't mind, I can look at the date.
Well, so, but for every homeless person in the United States, we don't have one empty house.
There are about
Home.
40.
We have not two empty homes. We have a lot of empty homes.
Yeah.
We have 40 empty homes for every homeless person in the United States. Oh, wow. So should we build more homes? Yeah, we should. Because the homes that are built as investment properties and second homes and vacation homes on Lake Tahoe, they're not in the right place. They're not built for the true needs of the people who are looking for homes. It doesn't.
45.9.
So let's say 46 because we're friends, right?
Yeah.
Let's say 46. Is it okay if we say 46? Okay.
You're saying about they're building homes, investment, well, my town has been acquiring building a bunch of homes. Like
What town?
Rutland,
Rutland, Vermont.
don't Rutland, Mass.
Rutland, Mass. No, I didn't.
It's Center Mass, North Worcester.
So it's building tons of homes.
Our town's building a tons of homes, like everywhere. They're sprawling everywhere.
Is it working?
Seems to be.
So it's bringing down house costs. Are these affordable? Because I will commute from Worcester. I will commute from Rutland. It's only an hour.
It's sort of.
It's helping the affordability crisis.
At least.
Yeah. So think about it. Rutland. Good school systems. Right? It would take you 3 hours to get to work by commuter rail from Worcester, Framingham.
It's usually about an hour 45, but
But driving.
driving is like a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So think about it. Okay. So, here are our topics. We're gonna skip the law of the Indies. We just make note of it. So when is a city like a machine? A city is like a machine when it takes on a certain characteristic of automatic reproduction. What if you could get a city? What if you could develop a system where you push a button and the city just effortlessly or with very little friction replicates itself? It expands according to needs. And the counterexample is, again, our reference point throughout the course is Barcelona. Up until until the 1850s, Barcelona was trying to industrialize, but it was not allowed to build outside of its original historic walls. And so there was no place to build. It couldn't industrialize. Every project was so difficult because of the spatial constraints. Every lot was so unique. It's encumbered with this old historic building. You have to adapt the building to the new industrial production. The building doesn't work for that purpose. So Barcelona was severely constrained. And then the magic of the grid was applied. They pushed a button, more or less, metaphorically, and the grid allowed Barcelona to expand beyond its medieval walls, and in a very short period of time, built tens of thousands of housing units, factories, industrial centers, workplaces, commercial operations, very, very quickly. It was the key to the modernization of that part of Spain. And so the city operates as a machine when the formal spatial institutional arrangements allows it to expand as needed quite rapidly with a minimum of friction. So we're going to look at that. We're going to plant a seed. What's going on here? Does anyone know what this is? What's going on here?
Rule.
Jeffersonian grid, yes. But what, was he drunk? Was the surveyor drunk?
No, wasn't drunk.
What? 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 Hey! Delete, edit, undo, line up those roads, right? Line up those roads. I'm sitting there driving. I'm driving, right? It's late at night. I'm a little groggy. I'm driving. Right? I'm driving the way people drive. Right? And all of a sudden, whoa, what's with this? A sharp right turn? This is life threatening. People die at this corner. And then again, why can't they just line this up? That's the mystery question. Think about it. So let's look at Greece. In architectural history, we like to look at the city of Athens, and we love looking at the Parthenon, the Acropolis, the Agora, the temples of the gods. But let's face it, it's kind of a mess, right? It's not a systematized arrangement. It's not a model for replication. The buildings, yes, but this layout, no, it evolved piecemeal over a long period of time. If you're the Greek city-state and you have all these ships and these slaves and these soldiers, what do? You do what you do. You go off and see and you conquer Troy and you conquer other things. And then you replicate your society, you dominate. But you can't do it with this model of architecture. And the Greeks did it. The Greeks and the Phoenicians colonized all over the Mediterranean. They came up with a much better system than what you see in Athens. They came up with a system that had two crucial components. The first component is ignore topography, ignore coastlines, ignore hills and valleys, fill them in as much as possible, smooth them out, but basically just ignore that and standardize your block and street layouts, just like New York City. Just like New York City. Step two, don't ignore the boundaries. So step one, ignore everything, just impose a standardized grid. Step two, acknowledge the limitations and end your grid according to the limitations. Don't fill in across this channel. That's too expensive. Just end the grid wherever you need to end the grid and build a wall around. So with these two simple rules, Greek civilization, the Greek city-state replicated its urban models all over the Aegean Sea. And we saw this in history too. Just to refresh your memory, we looked at history too at the French architect around of the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, and how the École des Beaux-Arts approach to architecture was to take Greek and Roman architectural forms and create a grid and use that grid to accommodate all sorts of new program requirements. And so that was the brilliant move of the 18th and 19th centuries to produce a modern architecture dressed up in Greek and Roman costume, architectural costume. You remember all this. Does this look familiar? A little bit? So first there was Greece. This is history one. Then there was Rome. Same thing. Rome itself was been great. The rest of you, you're going to love it. It's a mess. This is not an operating system that I would try to replicate. Just like in Athens. So what did they do? They did what architects do, the Noli map of Rome. They took the key elements of the Roman operating system, as some of you read in the reading. Did you notice that two of the authors of that are one of the faculty? You notice that? Jen Lee Mikhalishin and Rami El Samahi are the co-authors of this piece. They were going to make it a whole book, and whenever I see them, I say, come on, guys, make it a whole book. This reading, this short little reading, is really important. Give us more. We want more. So lots of key elements of Rome, but a mess. But if you're Rome, you need to expand. The whole operating system of Rome was based on expansion. So, wow, I get so busy when we do that. Stop it. So what's going on here?
Expansion of the Roman Empire.
How did they do that?
Here's the point.
Oh. So I can keep saying a safe distance, so I don't tip over. So Rome goes to its neighboring towns and conquers them, enslaves them, and says, you got to pay money back to Rome. But here's the good news. We're going to give you we're going to hand you the operating system of what we just did to you. And we want you to go off and do it to the next city. Any questions? Go. And so it's a giant Ponzi pyramid scheme. You understand how pyramid schemes work?
Yeah.
And so every town is enslaving the next town and then replicating it and sending money back to Rome. That's the operating system that produced one of the largest and most powerful empires in human history. And here's how they did it. They did it with roads, very well-constructed roads, that many of which are still in use today throughout Europe. This is the crosswalk. Remember in Elf when, what's his name? Who's the actor in Elf?
Buddy,
Or is it Buddy?
AKA Will Ferrell.
Will Ferrell, he's hopping on the crosswalks. He did not take this class. He just intuitively knows that the form of the crosswalk is an ingenious formal device for reconciling the needs of wheeled carts going in one direction and humans with legs and feet going in the other directions. Doesn't work for wheelchairs. And especially in the context of drainage happening in the streets, rainwater and human excrement. You don't want to step in it. Friends don't let friends. And so we have crosswalks like that. And wheeled carts pass on through. So the road system is a key part of the operating system. The aqueducts are a key part of the operating system. You need to keep the rate of the flow of water slow, but always moving. So if it's not pitched steeply enough, the water will stagnate and spoil, and it won't be healthy to drink. If you pitch it too steeply, it will erode the mortar and the brick, and it will fall apart prematurely. So this is a monumental accomplishment of surveying and engineering. Notice that how in Greece we have trabeated architecture where columns and beams are separate. And in Rome, we add vaulting. The arch is the innovation in Rome. And these long sightlines. And these sightlines are used to lay out these roads, these aqueducts, and the grids. So this is called a broma. And you see out on the Wentworth campus, civil engineering students basically engaged in the same activity, but they're using transits and learning how to survey land. And so in the operating system manual that we, the Romans, have arrived in your town, we've conquered you, we've we've killed part of your population, enslaved the rest. And we said, okay, here's how we did it. Here's what we want you to do. Here's the operating manual. Go to the next town, burn it to the ground, and lay out this geometry on the ashes of the town. Set up a reference point here and use the GROMA. Use this set of instruments to sight down these lines and lay out this grid. It's really, it's great. It's the best thing since sliced bread. You can quickly lay out a town, and then here are the elements that every Roman town needs to have. The market, which is the agricultural and commercial services, all of these things. You need certain elements, you need sources of water. And so this is the idealized new Roman settlement. You have the Cardo in the Decumanus. I think this is, Cardo is the hinge across which the sun pivots. So I think this is actually my hunter's bread. Or that's north. Anyway, oh yeah, that's north. Okay, so that's north. Ricardo runs north-south, and you put a gate in the wall, and from that gate, you go off to the other towns and cities adjacent. So that's the operating system. But this is the idealized version. There's no topography that changes the shape of this one. But if there is topography, you accommodate that topography. And so this is the operating system that we see famously in Timgad and throughout England. And here's a game you can play with your friends and family when you go on vacation to Europe. Whatever city you go to in Europe, you can play this game. The game is called Where's the original Roman settlement? Right? So where is the original Roman settlement? You see it? Here's the template. Timgad developed to a certain point and then was abandoned in Algeria. This is Lake Como in Italy. It was very successful. You see the original Roman settlement? Yeah. Well, then it didn't stop. And you see the original roads that went out across the agricultural land. As the city grew outside of the original walls, this is what happened. You see it? Do you see it? You see it here? Where is it?
Right there.
There. You want to point to it? You want to draw it?
No, not a circle.
It's not a circle.
No, I know, but
Is that a diagram? Draw the actual
Yeah, draw it.
reality, pixel by pixel. Right, pixel by pixel, the way you've been trained. Oh. Okay,
Hold on.
well done. You see what city this is? There's the baptistry, there's the cathedral. There's the largest dome. It was the largest dome for centuries. What city is it? Florence. Points for Jake. Okay, and then it stopped, right? Do you see more of the pattern? Did it stop there?
expanded.
It expanded. So people in the urbs, within the walls, inside the urbs, went outside the walls. They went they went out of the urbs into the, you said suburbs. They went into the suburbs. So this is the suburbs. And then protect the people living in the suburbs. What do? You build a wall. Do you see where the wall is? Who sees where the wall is? Give someone else a chance. Would you rather point? You don't want to point? Okay, we don't have time. See it? Is that where you saw it? And then it stopped. Oh, wait, it didn't stop. They moved out again. Where's the next wall? You see it? During COVID, this was much more effective because every student drew on the screen. And we had 48 lines on this slide. I should resurrect that slide.
Yep, I was right.
And then again. And then at a certain point, Canon became so powerful that the walls were not useful. And so that's the situation that Florence was in, Paris, Barcelona, that there were fields of fire, Vienna, empty space beyond the walls. And then the railroad was invented. And they brought the railroad into here, but they didn't bring it into here where they wanted to, where they could connect with the railway coming from the south. This is where the railroad wants to be. But why didn't they bring the railroad into there? Why isn't there a connection between North Station and South Station, despite the fact that the Big Dig promised to give us that? It's too expensive. There's too many city council members who have their homes between here and there, and we just couldn't afford to demolish that. So this is how we see this Roman operating system leaving its imprint on cities over the centuries and having an impact to why, when you're taking the train from Paris or from Amsterdam to Barcelona, what do you do when you get to Paris? You don't just change trains. You get out of your train that you took from Amsterdam to Paris. You get out of your train on the north side of Paris, and you make your way across Paris, hopefully in time to catch your train from the south side of Paris, because there are 7 train stations around Paris in a similar situation. They just couldn't get there. And we could keep doing it. When you fly over Italy, you will see this landscape, and just know that those patterns of agricultural lands belong to the original Roman operating system. So bringing that forward, Manhattan. This was the original Dutch settlement, and then they traded they traded Manhattan for an island in Southeast Asia, and the British took over. And then they took a bold leap and they just laid a grid out across Manhattan. They flattened the hills, filled in the ditches, and they laid out a grid that allowed every lot to be identical, 25 by 100 feet, so that you only had to design one tenement building, and that one tenement building could be built everywhere. Also, and the tenement, this is the evolution of the tenement building. This one was considered unhygienic before 1850 because the bedrooms didn't have windows. And so laws were passed and said, no, that's too far away from the windows. This is even worse. You're not making it better. And so they pushed through these light shafts, air shafts in the middle of the building so that every bedroom could have some access to light, either through the front or to the air shafts or to the back. And then those air shafts got larger, so the connection was more direct. And then they they combined lots, so it's 50 feet by 100 feet after 1901. Does that make sense? So this is the standardized design of the tenement buildings that filled up the grid of Manhattan. And you can only do that because every lot is the same, 25 feet by 100 feet. So that's one reason the grid was able to make it easier, automatic and friction-free to expand the city. Thomas Jefferson, even in the 70s, as soon as the new Constitution was ratified in 1783, the first thing that Thomas Jefferson did is he said, let's put a Roman grid across the North American continent so we can tax the land, so we can pay the debts from the Revolutionary War, and that we can rapidly expand the land ownership. And what else did the grid need to do in order to rapidly push its way across the Appalachian Mountains and across the continent? What did the grid need to do? It allows us to tax. It allows us to lay out plots. So this is the system that was used to go across the continent. The other thing we needed to do was we needed to displace the indigenous peoples that had occupied the continent since around 20,000, for the last 20,000 years. And so this is the rapid displacement of the lands. Now, there are two things that are weird about this system. There's multiple things that are weird about the system. One of the weird things is this land, who owns this land that's new? No one owns this land that's new. It makes no sense. The concept of land ownership itself is a bizarre thought. Here's Oklahoma, a special case. I wonder what's going to happen to Oklahoma. Bloop. So it's weird. It's a weird idea that a person can own land. It's a weird idea in the larger context of human history. And it's a weird idea. It's the same weirdness that we encountered when we were talking about informal settlements. That when Robert Neuwirth said, what if someone gave you a deed to your home in the informal settlement? And the people around him just started laughing. You don't understand how it works. That would be horrible. Well, it is horrible. It's the kind of horrible that is the world we live in now, where a single person can own land. It's at least, even though we've made it work pretty much, it's awkward at best. But this system allowed the rapid expansion of settlement. And now we get to this. Have you ever remember that Christmas day when you were growing up and your mom wanted to give you a soccer ball for Christmas? And so the wrapping paper is there, and there's the soccer ball. How does she wrap the soccer ball? How come the soccer ball is sewn with hexagons and pentagons and not squares? How come when you were sewing something, the fabric is like a grid, but your hips are round? How do you sew so that a grid can fit around your hips? This is a result of the curvature of the earth. So this is the next weird thing about this grid laying out property ownership across the continent. It is so vast that the curvature of the earth messes it up. And you have to do these pleats. You have to do these tucks. And so it's a very complex system based on these converging lines of latitude. And that's how large the system is. In contrast, indigenous ownership, this is a map of indigenous ownership. And it's not ownership, it's land rights. It's the right to use land, which is a more rational conception than monopoly ownership. There are overlapping land rights of the different societies that hold those rights. This is Oklahoma. And there are so many violations of the law that occurred in the displacement of indigenous peoples throughout the world that here in the 21st century and on into the year 2050, heads up. One of the issues you will be dealing with, maybe as soon as fall semester, is what to do with indigenous land rights that were not resolved legally. The courts are hearing cases and they're saying, yeah, no, US government, you stole this land, you have to give it back. So now what do? Do you place it in the hands of individuals and tribes? That was actually the mechanism that was used to steal the land in the first place. So no, you don't. You use collective land ownership, which is very similar to the legal mechanism of the community land trust. Barbed wire, railway systems, the Erie Canal, Chicago.
Wood light frame.
Hmm?
The wood light frame system, so.
Yeah, you want that one? Chicago burned down, and so one of the way that buildings used to be built with heavy timbers, not very efficient, lots and lots of trees to make a single house. In your careers, you will encounter post and beam systems. Do not fight it. Do not renovate it to be like this. Work within the confines of the post and beam system. That's okay. To be more efficient, Chicago was built with the balloon frame with 20-foot long studs, but that created an air pocket between every stud that allowed each of the wooden buildings of Chicago to burn very quickly. So instead, what we do, and I recommend highly that you all work on a construction team at some point and frame a platform frame wood building. How many people have done that? I recommend, isn't that a good thing to do for everyone? It's very satisfying. But because the platform goes to the edge of the building, it has fire stopping built into the structure. And this is a brilliant system that most of the house renovations you will be doing during your careers will require you to have a deep understanding of the rules of thumb of platform frame construction. The thesis of the Cronin is summarized in this slide. That the city of Chicago was a machine for processing the agricultural and commodities, the forest, the lumber, the minerals, the cattle, the wheat, the corn, the vegetables. Chicago was a giant machine for processing those commodities and sending them across the continent back to the eastern part of the United States. This is the slide. So this entire landscape and organized with the grid was an operating system for moving commodities into the city of Chicago where they were processed. And then the processed goods, often pork chops, for example, were taken back by rail and by water, the Erie Canal, back to the cities for consumption. So don't fall into the trap of thinking the city is one thing and the suburbs are another thing. No, it's a symbiotic, two parts of the same operating system. Don't think that the agricultural lands are separate from the cities. No, it is a single unified operating system, both in terms of production and consumption. So that's one of the key lessons of how the city operates as a machine. And what are the ecological consequences of this? They are profound. There's the deforestation, there's the use of fertilizer, there's the transportation emissions. And all of these systems need to be rethought and reconsidered so that they become more localized and lower impact on the climate. Use of fertilizers needs to be reduced. And so every aspect of this operating system is due for a radical upgrade. That is what architects do. Okay. That's it. Thank you, everyone.
So I have to refresh, which I changed everything listening to you.
Yeah, it will. It will.
We are there. Oh, you guys. So, my role here is trying to connect what we were discussing before with Robert's topic to next week. So we were talking about, if I remember, the last part of the last class was how we can make the cities more democratic. And we were talking about that several times, especially on Tuesdays, how we can change or adapt or adapt urban environments to make that more equitable and more just and more integrated with the people. So that was what we discussed before. We called that the space of democracy. You remember that? So how the space could be more democratic and how democracy could be exercised in cities. I want to introduce something today that is ecosystemic democracy, which is one step not towards last week or towards the next one when we'll discuss cities as organisms. So today we're talking about cities as a machine. Next week we'll talk about cities as organism and biomimicry. So ecosystemic democracy tries to jump a little bit between democracy for the people and democracy for the people and their ecosystems. But in order to do that, let me introduce a little bit this theoretical framework by Manuel de Sola Morales. Robert was talking about the grid as a tool to exercise or to implant the operating system. But Manuel de Sola Morales says that in order to build a grid, you need three components. It's really simple. You need urban, which is basically the roads. Robert described that very well, how that worked in the Roman Empire. And then roads are divided into parcels. You split the roads into parcels, and within the parcels, you have buildings. So depending on the different type of forms of urbanization, you have more different combination of these three components, but these three components are always there. You have roads, parcels, and buildings. And with the roads, parcels, and buildings, you create a grid that helps you to colonize territories in order to implant or impose or design, let's say, the operating the operating system into the territory. Did you get that? It's really simple. The question that I have for you, and I hope you can answer, is in this pattern when you have roads, parcels, and buildings. There are the three components that you have to create cities. The question that I have is, where is the people? And what is the land? How the people and how the land plays a role in this machine, this city as a machine. So where people have more agency, in roads, parcels, buildings, or nowhere, or none of them. These are the three components that we use to design, we have used to design cities. What is the people and what is the land? Oh, that's a real question, guys. Any idea? Where people have more agency, designing roads, designing parcels, or designing buildings? Ahí está.
People have enough agency into them buildings.
Just buildings. Okay, from 1 to 100, how much do you think people have agency in designing buildings? 70. Okay, you say 70. What about you, Mark?
Well, 100% the landowner. Well, then you could also say like then with subdivision, that person could buy a whole bunch of land and then say, I'm gonna divide this into however many parcels, and then they're becoming the person that buys the land. So there's like it's like an in between, I guess. Right?
Okay, you say this building, but not that much. This is what you're trying to say. If you can guess what is the percentage of people agency in buildings design, how much?
Building 1%.
100%. Yeah. Okay. And when you say 70% on that one,
But maybe because it's just the owner, not so much
it depends on who owns the land. Okay, and what is the land here? So we understand that when we design city, I'm trying to combine, I don't know if you remember that I was talking about normative needs. When you design anything, you have normative needs, the technical needs that we designer have to design something, for example, to design the thing. But at the same time, I was proposing that in order to be democratic, you need to integrate also what I called last week survival needs. So it's the needs of the people or needs for the feeling, not for the technical. So the question here is, if we want this to be democratic, we have to envision how we can integrate more the voice of the people, the design. So is it a way to design roads with the people? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what I described, I guess, is like someone could design their own network within a city. Like
Yeah.
their own something.
Actually, this is happening in self-produced environments. So sometimes the urban is also designed by people. So, and the second question here is, what is the land? Do you think the land is when we design cities? When we design roads, and then we divide roads into parcels, and parcels are having buildings. Do you believe that the land is listened? Do we listen the land? Does the land can be listened? So we were discussing for a while the last 4 weeks how we listen people. Now I want to introduce another ideas. Can we listen land as well? Your reaction, yeah.
I think like you can listen to the land, like the ability that you interact with it. So if you just look at it on a plan, then you'll be able to respond to like the geometrical like conditions of it. But like if you're building somewhere that you actually live and like have a relationship with that land, then you'll be able to like have a more I think nuanced design that like responds to many different senses of building.
Got that. He's talking about empathy. So we can be more empathy with the people, but also more empathy with the land. So you see, this is the example that Robert told us. He said clearly that one of the roles was to distribute these grids equally everywhere, but stop when the land happens. So it's basically one of the rules was basically neglecting the land. We don't have to listen that. The land is there, and we have to build to work against them instead of for them. So actually the roads, when you see the roads, actually the land disappears, and only we can see that in the horizon. If these roads are connected more for other forces and not for the land. So actually, what I want to propose today is that if we want to design for democracy, we need to think how the space plays a role, listening different type of stakeholders. And this is my slide from last week. Do you remember this one? I'm going to repeat that. This is a framework by Jürgen Habermas, School of Frankfurt, that they say that you want to design more democratic, you have to understand that there are technical interests, but also you have practical interests that are not necessarily technical, but also you have emancipatory interests. You have to listen architects, other professionals, and the people in order to have a theory of communicative actions where they have a dialogue to create an environment of freedom and equality. I'm trying to summarize thousands of books of this framework in few words, but basically the main role here is how we listened. How we listened when we were designing. Robert explained very well how we built neglecting other cultures in order to create a machine that consumed for the consumptions of productions in relationship with the land. So the question here, how we build a third nature that allows us to create a better communication with people and with land. I have a real question here. When I say that we have to listen to land, are you saying it's weird or not? It's not. Who believes it's weird? Can we listen to land? Something that we will see in 2 weeks when we talk about cities as organisms, that the history of civilization has come from listening to the land, to neglecting the land, to basically working against the land. The machine that Robert described is designing against the lands, and the design of urbanization of the cities of organisms basically working to dominate the land, and the cities as cosmos is basically working with the land. And this is when the idea of a spatial ecosystemic democracy takes on hold. So this concept, and I'm trying to move from democracy to a spatial democracy where we work in democracy in the space to ecosystemic democracy where democracy also includes more than humans. And this is a new topic that I'm trying to introduce today because that will help me to work, to talk with you next week, lots of us to talk about the city as organism and the city as cosmos. Ecosystemic democracy, what basically tries to explain is that we design for communities. The question is, why we have to stop the notion of community in human beings? Why we have to stop the notion of community only in women's and men's? Why other species could be, why they're not integrated in the way we design? And I think I did a job the first day of this class, So I don't know if you remember when I say that Boston has 8 million people for 5, but we don't know how many inhabitants it has if we include other species. So how many inhabitants, how many species live in Boston? Nobody knows because we're not counting them. And we can discuss that really radical. So, because this is basically the place or challenge the definition of what is nature and how we can integrate nature into human decision, how we can integrate nature into design. So there are many books that talks about that, and I want to introduce 2 particular. One is Marisol de la Cadena, Earth Beings, and the other one is Eduardo Kahn by How for Earth Things. They say that we have to start exploring something that they call ecosemiotic. That starts to creating a language. That sounds a little weird, I know. That how we can start a language that helps us to create a dialogue with more than humans. And how we design transition from cities as machines that works for the operation of the system that we have today to another system, a third nature that allows us to design not only for that machine that works for human production, but also that works with other species, with multi-species environment. This is not me, guys. So this, why this is not working? Oh, That's good. That works. No, that's good. Oh, these ideas are not mine. If you want to read a little bit more about that, I recommend you this book. It's called Second Nature. So actually that book starts with Kronos, the reading that you have for today. And they question why we have a third one, another nature. The first nature was the nature that existed before we came to this world, before Anthropocene. The second nature is the city as a machine, the city that is produced through that dialogue between nature and humans that create a second nature that is not against nature but working to transform that for the production of human conditions. So actually, if you are, I gotta take a risk here. I can argue that second nature, say city as a machine, isn't the second nature. And we have to move towards third nature to be more sustainable. What is the third nature? Nobody knows, and this is what we have to explore. And everything of that is under the umbrella of Bruno Latour, who created a new framework called political ecology. What this book says, guys, is that we need to start including ecological diplomacy into our designs, into our project. What is ecological diplomacy? So imagine that you are in the United Nations and you are representing your people and you are diplomat of that people. You represent them into the United Nations to put their voices into the assembly of the United Nations. What Bruno Latour says is, why not we have think that in dialogue with more than humans? Why we don't imagine that we are ecological diplomats? And when we design, we also represent others that have no voice. It means more than humans. So we are here not only to talk in favor of more of people, but also to talk in favor of the land. How we can include and listen to the land and the people when we design cities or anything. So the concept of ecological diplomacy is basically trying to understand how science plays a role in that interaction. So let me come back to the idea of citizen participation. If you remember well, so citizen participation the ladder of participation have all of these levels. We usually, participatory planning usually plays a role here in the consultation. The question is how we can move upwards and include not only people, but also more than humans. Actually, more than humans is a concept coined by David Adams, but very well developed by Marisol de la Cadena. What I'm trying to say here is that this is not something that we are inventing. It's something that is in the theory. How we can place a role to integrate more than humans into that ladder of participation. So I gotta have a permission. Sorry, Robert, I have to discuss that before with you. I didn't do it. Can I talk with Robert something?
No, I agree.
Okay. Can I show some of my projects here?
Please.
Okay. Yeah, this is some of the images of a project that I'm working now in Uruguay. So we were trying to find a way to include more than humans into participatory planning. So one of the problems here is that when we go to the government or we go to academia and we say, we are trying to be ecological diplomats, we're trying to include more than humans in the decision making, everybody laughs. So the government says, you are crazy. How you can include forests into your decision making? How you can include tigers or capybaras? But when you go to the land and talk with the rural person, for them it's completely normal. Of course, the land talks. Every day the forest say things. We have to learn how to listen then. What we are trying to propose here is that it is probably a third nature, a nature that overcomes the issues of the city as a machine, probably comes from understanding that design is not only human-centered, but design should be more than human-centered. understand that we are not alone, and the ecosystem should play a role into our design proposals. So how we can create participatory planning that includes more than humans. In order to explain that, I have to explain a little bit what is nature. And that will help save me time for next week. So basically, in the history, and we were talking about a lot of democracy and how we design in democratic environment, okay? So we have, probably we can agree that in order to be democratic, we should be multicultural. Are we agree with that? Yeah. So basically, one of the keys of democratic, of participatory planning, or instruments to be more inclusive, of affordability, everything that we were discussing of eyes on the street, of transit-oriented development, all of these rules have the notion of multiculturalism embedded. So the notion that we design for more than one culture, and we have to include diversity. And this is the key to be more democratic, and the tool is participatory planning, participation. Are you agree with that? Okay. If we include more than humans, we have to understand how environments plays a role. And basically what Bruno Latour said is that while we imagine democracy as multicultural environments, we usually think in the nature as mononatural. So these are multiple things, and this is only one thing. The natural environment is only one. Actually, he criticized the word environment because the environment is what surrounds us. So the word environment itself puts the humans in the center and put the nature in the context, in that thing that surrounds us. So he proposed that, and that's the seed, that the beginning, that the essence, that the core of extractivism. And the city is a machine where you have a core that consumes and a context that produces. That amazing image that Robert shows you, that you have the city and the landscape and how both are connected. The city or the environment is a machine. So when he proposed, why we don't change the notion of mononaturalism into multinaturalism? So we are multicultural here, but the nature is also multiple. And why we don't change this, not for environment, something that surrounds us, but from an ecosystem, something that plays a role systemically in the way we operate with them. It's trying to understand that there is not only one nature, there are many types of nature. And we have to start reading them to understand that even if we are here and we believe that this is the center, this is the environment, these are always connected. So we cannot be disconnected from the environment. It's always in an intricate system of relations that makes us to be here. And you should know that, and for me, this is the essence of sustainability. So guys, you now know, and when I was educated, I had a failure. I knew that I can go to Home Depot and take a stock and build my home. Now we know that this stock comes from somewhere. And there is a carbon path that and an energy consumption and a waste that have produced and is produced by that stock. So everything at the end is urban, everything is related as well with the nature. I always say that when you take out a tree in the middle of the Amazon, that is an urban thing. Because this is happening with an urban revolution. So the thing here is that we cannot say anymore that democracy for human and that I work with an environment, because at the end, democracy should happen everywhere and everything is connected everywhere. So it's a systemic, complex relations of multi-species interactions that what produces the architecture and the city we have. And this is ecosystemic democracy. Understand that we have to play for more than one. And if we don't do it, we will be working with the city as a machine that face destruction, where and basically try to challenge the idea that we have the city and the countryside, but everything is connected, everything at the end is urban. If you want to, so next week, I have 10 minutes left, but if you want, if you want to learn a little bit more about that and how to design with that, I recommend you these 3 books. And I will expose this in detail next week. So now we're trying to explore, this will come with real action, but if for your analysis, you want to think about the strategies, about how we can design with ecosystem, design with the pluriverse, and especially this book, you can find this book is available in the website, the internet, it's free, it's a World Bank publication that is a natural-based solutions. How we can design with nature is basically one of the core that we want you to explore the next 2 weeks in your analysis. How we design with nature, having the nature with us in order to transition from a series of machines, having the humans, not the humans, human consumption in the center, from a city that integrates more ecosystems and lives in the land where we are designing. Yeah. This is to say that the city is like urban production and consumption is everywhere. So I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna say, like, fasten your seatbelt because we use 7 minutes, only 7 minutes, to do some examples of things that my group, I lead a group called Special Opportunity Lab. We're doing in Uruguay in order to create a participatory planning that is more ecosystem development. This is the land. This is Uruguay. It's a very complex space that have beautiful environments, but also spaces for consumption that are all integrated. So as many parts of the world, nature and culture are mixed. So we're trying to find a model where we blur the line between production and conservation. We blur the line between culture and nature, and we try to design not only with people, but also with ecosystem. The area is 400 hectares of land. It's like 27 times the size of Boston. And we are trying to create a new planning framework for this area. And the model is really simple. We sit in the same table, a different stakeholder. We have a researcher, which is me or one of my team. We have a cartographer. We have a representative of the production of the production. Could be like farmers or for example, real estate developers. We have academia. We have residents or social civil society. We have the government, and we have ecological diplomats. So the responsibility of this guy is to represent the environment. He's there to talk in favor of more than human or multi-species environment. And we sit together around the table to discuss. There are many details about that I want to skip now, and also we create an idea that we called the listening deck. I'm putting that in the slideshow. You can read in detail, but there are a set of steps for us to play a game that help us to be more ecological diplomats. And in order to do that, first of all, this should be a video. It's not working, but we put several trail cameras in the environment, and these trail cameras basically cast where different species were located, and we map them into the land to understand where people really live and try to understand where the habitat that, for example, in this case, the margay, which is the kind of tiger, works. So to discover that more of the tigers are usually located when you have native forests. So we discovered, voila, native forests are important. And same thing with dragon, which is a little reptile that are basically located into wetlands. And they're also the same with rana monito, which is a little frog that are mostly in roquedales, which is rock formations. So we basically trying to survey where more non-human species live, and to map them and to include them into a system of layers for the design. So we decided to design these flashcards, and with different types of stakeholders, including ecological diplomats, we were playing a game with the flashcards, trying to imagine what are the conditions that we have to include for the design of this land. And for that, we designed this little instructions. So when imagine that you enter to the site, Alex, you come to the meeting and you and we decided that you are a farmer. But in that meeting, we asked you to be a Margai. So you have to study Margai's conditions. Margai is a tiger. And you have to represent Margai when we're discussing in that meeting. You have to be the diplomat, they call it the diplomat Margai. But Angeli, who is an architect, she will play the role of the rancher, and I will play the role of the forest. So you have different people playing different roles. We have discovered that helps you, and this is a recommendation for you, that you play a role of others. You can reduce the importance that you have in the game. And we spend several times for them to study what is happening. Sometimes this is the most important one. Huh? So when they are playing the game and designing, you have to know, Alex, that if you are a tiger, your priority is to protect and reconnect native forest systems. So you are stubborn, reconnecting native forest system in order for you to live, because in this moment you're a tiger. But if you are a rancher, you have to maintain a productive and secure rural system because you want to produce money. And we were discussing how they work together in order and how they are how they can happen together. So you have these different flashcards, and they were putting there is some instruction that how people put these flashcards in the table. So if you are the Margai, you say this is very important. You find the flashcard that includes the day before, you put that in the table, so we have to draw that and highlight that in the table. So it's a methodology that helps us to understand how different layers that we surveyed before plays a role into the design. And that happened with 230 people in 8 different meetings with 8 different locations, people discussing, and while we were drafting, playing with the cards and drafting that in the map, there was a cartographer who was mapping that in Google My Maps, and then that was transferred to the GIS guy to create the maps of planning. So it's a new planning framework that tries not only to draft the lines for democratic production, actually, not for production, not even for democratic production, but for ecosystemic democratic production. How we can produce listening people and land at the same time. And this is just an invitation for you to think beyond the traditional way of the city as a machine or government as a machine. After that, we combine all of them into system in cartography. This is called land suitable analysis. That was something created by this guy, Ian McCarr. Ian McCarr was a professor from the University of Pennsylvania, 1961, that he said that you can combine different layers together, and the overlap of these layers can produce the intensity. Is that a word? Intensity of how these different layers come together. So we combine biodiversity with production, with threat in the environment, with heritage, survey with the game, and how they are combined to create a synthesis about how all of these voices plays a role. So at the end, it's using science, this game, cartography as a science, to integrate the voice of land and the voice of people through that ecological diplomacy that I said you before. We have 5 minutes left. That will give you to introduce something that we will discuss next week, is the city as organism, and how we can start transitioning from listening or designing a city as a machine for production, that a city that includes biomimicry, or how we can mimic the power of nature into our design. We have 5 minutes for the what's the point group. Any question for us, guys? Okay, thank you. What's the point thing, please?
You guys need lights.
Wait.
You need the lights, guys?
Let's do lights. Let's do lights. I can do it gently.
Gently.
In case I can't do a 10th meeting, I want everybody to close their eyes. Oh, I can't do a 10th meeting.
Well, I got it.
Sure. While we're making the transition, I just want to say, remember the first meeting when we talked about game theory?
What's the
This
point of it about it?
is a demonstration of how game theory has emerged as a very important conceptual framework for the practice of architecture, and how you can imagine on these intensity maps at each location with all these overlapping priorities and forces. An architectural production at any point has a very clear set of forces and priorities to respond to. This is not just a mapping exercise. It is the basis for any architectural intervention that occurs.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the point.
Well, to summarize the lectures, I think both of them were talking about the designing against the land and designing for the land. So looking into possible questions for analysis or topics, I think regarding the first part of the lecture, it could be looking into cities are machines and how the formal, spatial, and institutional arrangements are working together to produce and develop the cities, mostly for the human production. And looking at the other part of the lecture, it would be kind of the opposite, how you can design with the land, and the ecological diplomacy.
Yeah, I think for what I saw also is for that first part of the lecture showcasing that machine, where it's like what are projects or places that utilize those roads, those gates, like Robert was talking about, and also for the land, what are projects that listen to the land versus projects that ignore it, and what's the benefit of each one, and what's the downfall of each one. And then also one question that I had during the lecture was, at what point does land stop being a place and start being an investment? One of the questions I had moving forward.
For a point of the history, you said? Or
Just in general, as land, at what point does it stop being land itself in a place and start becoming that investment we're talking about?
Yeah, like, this is your chance to coach your colleagues and, hey, here's what we need for the analysis.
I think you guys did a great job speaking about commercial services and agricultural services shape cities in terms of positive, like in terms of rising gas prices, and how like a byproduct of that could be cities being forced to like locally source stuff. So maybe that would be a good thing to also look into possible areas that something like that is happening. And also looking into the logistic factors that also shape cities.
Totally agree with you guys what you said.
So what do we need for Tuesday?
So Tuesday, we need basically an example that you may have found or looked at the presentation. So we need an analysis Tuesday, principles, diagram of your analysis, and a video.
Yeah, that's the tool. What kind of forces, like, how should I choose project I analyze? Should I look for something positive
Yes,
that demonstrates ecosystem democracy?
somewhere between the lines. Yeah.
Okay. What might that be? What does ecosystem democracy look like?
Question. Some of us would like to know.
how it looks like?
Look at the slides.
And beyond the slides, don't look at my slides. I didn't show you any examples of ecosystem democracy. But the world needs, the profession needs clear demonstrations of what architecture can do to advance this type of operating system that that represents and presents the priorities of more than humans.
Yeah, so if you find example where more than humans are included into a design project to transform any environment, and we say any environment could be urban or what we have called not that urban, but area. So that is a good point. So how we can design homes where more than humans are included? That could be a good source.
Beautiful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.